I used to believe that architecture and marriage shared the same principles: solid foundations, thoughtful design, and honest communication. At 35, I'd built a respectable career creating spaces for others, while my own began to crumble. The irony doesn't escape me. I first noticed the shift in Eliza's eyes. 7 years into our marriage, the warm amber that once held my gaze now drifted past me, searching for something, someone else. We still occupied the same house on Maple Street, still slept in the same bed, but the space between us had become architectural in its precision, measured, deliberate, expanding. "You're overthinking again, Michael," she'd say whenever I'd ask if something was wrong. Maybe I was. Architects are detail people. We notice when the smallest element is out of place. I remember our third date. Eliza in that blue dress, laughing at my terrible joke about load-bearing walls, her hand finding mine under the table. "You see the world differently," she'd said. "I like how your mind works." Back then, her psychology background complemented my structured thinking. She brought spontaneity. I provided stability. We made sense together. "We should talk more," I suggested one evening, as she scrolled through her phone, a wall of glass between us. "We talk all the time." She didn't look up. "No, we exchange information, that's different." She glanced at me then, her expression unreadable. "What do you want to talk about?" I couldn't articulate it. How do you explain the absence of something? The missing warmth? The vanishing intimacy? So I said nothing, and the silence stretched on. Another brick in the wall between us. The questions I couldn't ask piled up. Why did she password protect her phone last month? Why did dinner with friends suddenly become dinner with colleagues I'd never heard of? Why did she still smell like perfume when she came home at midnight from book club? One Tuesday night, I came home early from the firm. A headache had forced me to abandon the community center plans I'd been revising. The house was quiet when I entered, but Eliza's voice drifted from our bedroom upstairs. I paused at the foot of the stairs, not intending to eavesdrop until I heard, I know. The divorce conversation needs to happen soon. Yes, I think it's working. He doesn't suspect anything. I just need time. This will make him realize what he's losing. Yes, I can finally get him back." My hand gripped the banister as the foundation of my life shifted beneath me. The next morning, I placed a cup of coffee on Eliza's nightstand. The ritual so familiar, my body performed it while my mind raced elsewhere. I watched her stir, her dark hair spread across the pillow we'd picked out together at some department store, whose name I couldn't remember. "Who were you talking to last night?" The question hung between us, heavier than I'd intended. She blinked sleep from her eyes. "What?" "On the phone, around 8. Her face remained neutral, too neutral. "Oh, just Jen. Wedding planning drama." She reached for the coffee. "Why?" "I thought I heard the word divorce." Her laugh came too quickly. "Michael, seriously? You must have misheard. We were talking about her sister's wedding dress." She sipped her coffee, eyes not quite meeting mine. "Why would I be talking about divorce?" I nodded, feeling something crack inside me. 7 years of marriage had taught me the cadence of her lies. They always contained excessive detail, as if specificity could substitute for truth. 3 nights later, Eliza cooked dinner, something she hadn't done in months. Salmon with dill sauce, my favorite. The dining room lights were dimmed, wine poured. I watched her arrange the silverware with unusual precision. "This is nice," I said, caution edging my voice. "I thought we needed it." She smiled, the expression not quite reaching her eyes. "So, hypothetically speaking..." I froze mid-bite. "Yes?" "What would you do if someone you knew was considering divorce?" My fork hovered between plate and mouth. That's an interesting dinner topic. Just curious, professionally speaking. Eliza twirled her wine glass. One of my clients is struggling with whether to tell her husband she wants out. I set my fork down. I'd want honesty, hypothetically speaking. Even if it hurt? Especially then. I studied her face. The longer the lie, the deeper the wound. I thought about the first time we met, a mutual friends gallery opening. Eliza had stood before an abstract painting, head tilted in concentration, unaware of my approach. It looks like a conversation, I'd said, nodding toward the canvas. She'd turned, surprised. What do you mean? The shapes, they're reaching toward each other, but not quite connecting. She'd smiled then, genuinely. I was just thinking the same thing. Now, across our dining table, we were those shapes, proximate but disconnected, speaking different languages. The changes accumulated. Password notifications popping up on our shared laptop, late nights at client meetings, her phone always face down. I became a detective in my own marriage, hating myself for it even as I searched for clues. Then came the email. I hadn't meant to see it. I was looking for a document we'd shared when her email account opened automatically on our home computer. The subject line caught my eye. It's been too long. James? James, her college boyfriend, the one who'd broken her heart senior year. I clicked, knowing I shouldn't. Eliza, seeing you again brought everything back. I'm still processing my divorce, but knowing you're considering your options gives me hope. Take all the time you need with Michael. I'll be here. Jay. The words blurred as my stomach dropped. So there it was. The truth hiding in plain sight. I closed the email, walked to our bedroom, and sat on the edge of the bed. Denial came first. Maybe it was innocent. Anger followed. 7 years meant nothing? Confusion clouded everything. Had I been so blind? That weekend, Eliza met Sarah for lunch, a friend from her college days I'd always liked. When she returned, I texted Sarah to thank her for treating Eliza. Her response was immediate. What do you mean? I haven't seen Eliza in months. The following week, Marcus and Tina, our regular dinner companions, called to check if I was doing okay with everything. When I asked what they meant, the pause was excruciating. With the separation, Marcus finally said, Eliza mentioned you two were taking a break to reevaluate things. I swallowed hard. Right. Thanks for checking in. That night, Eliza found me in the living room, lights off, staring at the skyline through our wall of windows. I think we need to talk, she said softly, sitting across from me. About the separation you've already announced to our friends? She didn't flinch. I think we need some space, Michael, to figure out what we both want. What exactly do you want, Eliza? Her eyes dropped to her hands. I think we should separate for a while, to figure things out. I nodded slowly. The phone conversation replaying in my head. The divorce conversation needs to happen soon. This will make him realize what he's losing. Yes, I can finally get him back. Everything clicked into place with terrible clarity. The guest room became my new territory, neutral ground in what was once our shared life. My clothes migrated to the spare closet piece by piece, a slow-motion evacuation that felt both surreal and inevitable. I hung my 3 best suits and wondered how many more nights I'd spend in limbo. We should try counseling, I suggested one morning, over the kitchen island that now served as our demilitarized zone. I didn't recognize my own voice, too measured, too calm for the hurricane inside me. Eliza looked up from her toast, surprise briefly crossing her face. You think that would help? I think we owe 7 years that much. I watched her carefully, searching for any sign of genuine interest. "Fine. Set it up." She returned to her phone, dismissing the conversation. Dr. Levine's office smelled like lavender and looked like a catalog version of comfort. Plush chairs, muted colors, strategically placed tissues. Eliza sat with perfect posture, offering textbook responses while checking her watch. I spoke about communication breakdowns and emotional distance, feeling increasingly like I was performing in a play where only I didn't know the ending. "Eliza, how do you feel when Michael expresses these concerns?" Dr. Levine asked during our third session. "I understand his perspective," she answered. A response so clinically detached it could have come from one of her psychology textbooks. After 4 sessions, Dr. Levine suggested individual counseling alongside our joint sessions. "Sometimes we need space to understand our own needs before addressing the relationship," she explained. Eliza declined. I agreed immediately. 3 weeks into our separation, Eliza mentioned dinner with her study group. Her graduate program in clinical psychology often required late meetings, but something in her voice sounded off-key. After she left, I sat in our silent house, the doubt like acid in my stomach. I never planned to follow her. The decision happened in an instant. Pure impulse from a man who'd built his career on careful planning. I grabbed my keys and drove downtown. Her car was parked outside Vesuvio's, the Italian restaurant where we'd celebrated our 5th anniversary. Through the window, I saw them immediately, Eliza and a man with salt and pepper hair, leaning toward each other across a candle-lit table. Her hand rested on his. Her laugh, the real one that reached her eyes, directed at whatever he'd just said. James. I drove home in a fog, memories of our wedding day flooding back with cruel clarity. Eliza in white, promising forever on that sunny June afternoon. Her voice steady as she vowed honesty and faithfulness. My childish certainty that we'd beaten the odds simply because we'd promised to. The next day I called David, my oldest friend from college. "I need a drink," I said when he answered. 3 beers later, in a corner booth at O'Malley's, I told him everything. "Christ, Michael." David ran a hand through his thinning hair. "I didn't know how to tell you, but Eliza's been saying you two are divorcing. She told Rachel at the gym last week." Rachel, David's wife, had known Eliza since before our marriage. "Divorcing?" The word felt foreign in my mouth. "Not separating or taking a break? Divorcing?" David nodded grimly. Rachel said Eliza seemed, I don't know, almost excited about it, like she was starting a new chapter. The final pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Eliza's college boyfriend divorces his wife. Eliza creates a divorce narrative to make herself available. The getting him back wasn't about me at all. It was about James. I spent the weekend combing through old emails, text messages, credit card statements. The evidence mounted. Coffee meetings that aligned with James's business trips to our city. Calls during times I was reliably at work. A hotel charge on our joint credit card for a night she'd claimed to be at a conference. When Eliza returned Sunday evening, I was waiting in the kitchen, printed emails and statements spread before me. "We need to talk," I said. "Can it wait? I'm exhausted." "No." She sighed, dropping her bag. Her eyes fell on the papers. "What's all this?" "Evidence." The word came out harder than I intended. "Of whatever's going on with James." Her face shifted. Surprise, then anger, then something like resignation. "You went through my emails? You've been telling people we're divorcing." She sat down heavily. "It's complicated, Michael." "Simplify it for me." James and I reconnected at a conference 3 months ago. His divorce had just finalized. We got talking about missed opportunities. "And you decided to create some new ones." Her eyes flashed. You haven't been present in this marriage for years. You're married to your blueprints and deadlines. So this is my fault? It's not about fault. She sounded like she was speaking to one of her patients. James made me feel seen again. So, seen that you started planning our divorce without telling me? She looked away. I never actually filed anything. But you told everyone we were divorcing. Why? Her silence confirmed what I already knew. You wanted him to think you were available. This separation, it was all a show for his benefit. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Eliza? She examined her hands. I needed time to figure things out, to see if what I felt for James was real or just nostalgia. And the divorce talk? She hesitated. I might have implied things were further along than they were. To pressure him into committing. She didn't deny it. I think we should pause this divorce conversation, she said finally. Take some real time to work on us. I stared at her, recognition dawning. He didn't respond the way you hoped, did he? The divorced man wasn't ready to jump into another relationship. Her flinch told me everything. I'm your backup plan. The realization settled like concrete in my chest. Your safety net if the James experiment doesn't work out. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Eliza. I gathered the papers into a neat stack. I'm not a chess piece you can move around your board. I'm your husband. I know, and I'm sorry. I got confused, but I want to fix this. Looking at her across the kitchen island, the woman I'd built my life with, I finally saw the truth. I had become nothing more than a pawn in her manipulation. A temporary obstacle to overcome or return to, depending on how her real gambit played out. The Riverside Community Center project landed on my desk 3 weeks after moving into the guest room. Green space integration is key, my boss emphasized. Get with the landscape team and make it seamless. That's how I met Naomi Chen, 38, recently promoted to lead landscape architect, with a reputation for transforming concrete jungles into breathable spaces. She arrived at our first meeting in practical boots and a worn leather jacket, portfolio tucked under her arm. So you're the structure guy? She said, extending her hand. No smile, no small talk. And you're the tree person. Oversimplification, but accurate enough. Then she did smile, brief but genuine. Show me what we're working with. Over the following weeks, our collaboration evolved from professional necessity to unexpected ease. Naomi approached design the way she seemed to approach life, with directness and purpose. When my proposed entryway compromised her green corridor, she didn't soften the critique with niceties. This doesn't work, she said simply, sketching an alternative. But this would... That affects the interior flow, I countered. Then we adjust the interior. She looked up. The point is connection, right? Inside to outside, we can solve this. I found myself looking forward to our meetings, the creative problem-solving, yes, but also the refreshing clarity of her communication. Nothing hidden, nothing implied. Just honest collaboration. One evening, working late at the office, Naomi noticed my distraction as we reviewed the rooftop garden specs. You've read that same paragraph 3 times, she observed, leaning back in her chair. What's going on? I hesitated, boundaries between professional and personal blurring. Marriage issues. Sorry, it's affecting my focus. She nodded, no pity in her expression. That happens. We've been separated for about a month, living in the same house, different rooms. That sounds awful. She closed her laptop. Want to get a drink and not talk about work or your marriage? We ended up at a quiet bar 2 blocks from the office. She ordered whiskey neat, I chose the same. So, what do you do besides create buildings and navigate complicated relationships? she asked, direct as always. The question startled a genuine laugh from me. I used to mountain bike, play chess, read actual books instead of emails. I couldn't remember the last time someone had asked about me, not my marriage or my work. What about you? I grow things, vegetables mostly, some flowers. I renovate old furniture, and I'm learning to make decent ramen, the real kind, not the packet stuff. Something about her self-sufficiency reminded me of early conversations with Eliza before we married. How she'd described her childhood dream of becoming a marine biologist, the summer she spent tracking wolf populations in Montana, her backpacking trip through Southeast Asia. Somewhere along the way, those stories had stopped. My wife and I used to talk like this, I said, surprising myself with the admission. About anything, everything. Naomi didn't offer platitudes. What changed? I wish I knew. I traced the rim of my glass. Maybe we got too comfortable, or too busy, or maybe we were always more in love with who we thought the other person was. She considered this. My last relationship ended because we were trying to fulfill roles instead of being people. He wanted the supportive girlfriend who'd prioritize his career. I wanted the sensitive guy who'd validate my ambitions. Neither of us got what we needed. How long did it take to get over it? Bold assumption that I have. She smiled slightly. It gets easier. You learn what patterns to avoid next time. As weeks passed, our project meetings became punctuated with personal conversations. I learned about her parents' immigration from Taiwan, her college years studying environmental science before finding landscape architecture, her disastrous first marriage at 24. At home, Eliza and I orbited each other with careful politeness. How was work? She'd ask, and I'd offer generic responses, omitting any mention of Naomi or how our collaborative sessions had become the part of my day I most anticipated. The contrast became impossible to ignore. The strained conversations with Eliza versus the effortless exchange with Naomi. Home had become a performance space. Work had become where I could breathe. You seem different lately, David observed over lunch one Tuesday. Less, I don't know, haunted? The project's going well, I said, not meeting his eyes. Just the project? I focused on my sandwich. The landscape architect is excellent. We work well together. David raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. That evening, reviewing sustainable materials with Naomi, I caught myself watching her hands as she sketched. Efficient, expressive movements that matched her straightforward personality. She looked up, catching my gaze. What? Nothing, just appreciating your approach. She studied me, head slightly tilted. To drawing? To everything. Something shifted in the air between us. Recognition, possibility, danger. Michael. My name in her voice sounded like a caution. I know. I looked away. I'm still technically married, and I'm not interested in being someone's transition person. I wouldn't ask you to be... She nodded, returning to her sketch. Good, because I like working with you too much to complicate it. Driving home, I confronted the truth I'd been avoiding. I was developing feelings for Naomi. Feelings that had nothing to do with escaping my marriage and everything to do with who she was. Direct, thoughtful, genuine. And for the first time since discovering Eliza's deception, I felt something worse than anger or betrayal. I felt guilt. I never expected to feel violated by a text message notification. But there it was, my phone lighting up on the kitchen counter while I made coffee, Eliza's eyes flicking toward it before I could reach it. Naomi, again? She stirred her tea with deliberate slowness. You two seem to text a lot on weekends. Something in her tone made me pause. How would you know how often Naomi texts me? She sipped her tea, not meeting my eyes. Just an observation. I picked up my phone, navigating to settings, and found what I was looking for. My message notifications had been enabled on our shared iPad. The iPad I hadn't used in months, the one that now lived on Eliza's nightstand. "You've been reading my texts." I set my phone down carefully, as if it might detonate. "I glanced at a few," she admitted, no real remorse in her voice. "You've been distant. I was worried." Worried? The word tasted sour. Or looking for ammunition? That's not fair. Neither is invading my privacy. Heat rose in my chest, especially after everything you've been hiding. She set her mug down with a sharp click. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you don't get to manufacture a separation to make your ex jealous, then spy on me when it doesn't work out." "Is that what you think happened?" "I know it's what happened, Eliza. I've seen the emails. I know about the dinners with James. I know you told our friends we were divorcing before you ever mentioned separation to me." She flinched, then rallied. "And I know you're having an emotional affair with your colleague." The accusation hung between us like smoke. "Those texts weren't romantic." "They were intimate," she countered. "All those deep conversations about your feelings, your past, your dreams. When was the last time you talked to me like that? When was the last time you listened without an agenda?" Her face hardened. "So this is my fault?" "This is both our faults, but your solution was manipulation, not honesty." "What does that mean?" "It means you pretended to want a divorce to make James jealous. It means you used our marriage as leverage in a game I didn't even know I was playing." The silence stretched between us, taut and dangerous. "Fine," she finally said, her voice strangely calm. "Yes, James and I reconnected. Yes, I implied our marriage was further gone than it was, but I never actually cheated." Emotional infidelity is still betrayal, Eliza. You taught me that, remember? In our second year of marriage, when you accused me of the same with my assistant? Her lips thinned. That was different. How? Because James was supposed to... She stopped herself. "He was supposed to what?" I pressed. "Leave his wife? Choose you this time? And when he didn't, you decided to salvage what was left here?" Her silence was answer enough. "It didn't work out with him, did it?" I kept my voice even. "The divorce scare didn't have the effect you wanted. He wasn't ready to commit." She looked away. "He got back with his ex-wife. Said he needed to be sure before making another mistake. And suddenly you wanted to work on our marriage. Is that so wrong?" Her eyes met mine, defiance mixing with something like desperation. "I made a mistake. I got confused, but I want to try again, for real this time." I remembered then, our third month of dating. Eliza had created a similar triangle with her previous boyfriend. Taking a break from our new relationship, implying to him she might return if he made certain changes. When he refused, she came back to me, full of renewed commitment and passion. I'd been so relieved, so flattered to be chosen, I'd ignored the manipulation. "This isn't the first time," I said quietly. "You did this when we were dating, with Robert." Her eyes widened slightly. "That was completely different." "Was it? Creating artificial distance to pressure someone? Using me as your safety option?" "You weren't a safety option. I chose you. After your first choice rejected you." She stood abruptly. "And what about Naomi? Don't pretend you haven't thought about her that way." The accusation landed like a physical blow, partly because of its grain of truth. "I've developed feelings for Naomi," I admitted, "but that's not why our marriage failed." "So you admit it, you're having an affair." "I've never acted on those feelings. I've never lied about my whereabouts to meet her. I've never used our relationship to manipulate her emotions." Eliza laughed bitterly. You expect me to believe nothing happened between you? Unlike you, I don't lie to the people I love. The words hung in the air, past tense implicit. She sank back into her chair. So that's it? You're giving up? I'm acknowledging reality. We've been performing a marriage, not living one. We don't trust each other. We don't even know each other anymore. We can fix this. Her voice had lost its edge, turning placating. We've invested 7 years, Michael. That means something. I looked at the woman I'd once planned to grow old with, and realized I'd been holding on to a version of her that no longer existed, perhaps had never existed outside my imagination. Love isn't an investment portfolio, Eliza. It's not about how much time you've put in or what you might lose by walking away. It's about honesty, mutual respect, the freedom to be yourself without fear or calculation. And you think you'll find that with Naomi? Bitterness edged her words. This isn't about Naomi, it's about us, about the pattern we've created and repeated for 7 years. I took a deep breath. I want a divorce. The words felt both terrible and liberating, like setting down a weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. You don't mean that. Her voice had turned small. I've already spoken to an attorney. Her eyes widened. When? Last week. The papers will be ready Monday. Because of her. Because of us. Because I deserve honesty, and so do you. Eliza's face crumpled, anger giving way to something raw. I do love you, you know. In my way. I know. And I did. But love isn't enough when there's no trust. 3 days later, I signed the divorce petition in my lawyer's office, my hand steady as I wrote my name on the dotted line. Whatever happened with Naomi, if anything ever happened, would come after. This decision wasn't about finding someone new. It was about finally being honest with myself. The apartment on Sycamore Street wasn't much, a 1-bedroom walk-up over a Thai restaurant that filled the stairwell with lemongrass and garlic every evening. The rent was reasonable, the location convenient. Most importantly, it was mine. I moved on a Thursday, David and 2 other friends helping with the essentials: bed, couch, desk, enough kitchen supplies to pretend I might cook. Eliza had been generous in the division of belongings, or perhaps just strategic. Our prenuptial agreement meant the house and most assets remained separate property. You sure you want the IKEA bookshelf instead of the antique one? David asked as we assembled Swedish particle board. The antique was from her family. I tightened a bolt. Besides, this one matches my new aesthetic. Which is single architect minimalism. He laughed, but his eyes held concern. How are you, really? I considered the question. Somewhere between relieved and terrified. The divorce proceedings moved with the glacial pace of all legal matters. Mediation sessions oscillated between productive and painful. Sometimes Eliza would be coldly practical, dividing frequent flyer miles and holiday decorations with businesslike efficiency. Other days, she'd arrive with red-rimmed eyes, asking if we could talk privately about giving things another chance. The most difficult day came when I returned to the house to collect the rest of my clothes. Eliza had laid out photos on the dining room table. Our honeymoon in Costa Rica, a surprise birthday party she'd thrown me, Christmas with both our families. Remember this? She held up a snapshot from a friend's wedding, both of us laughing at some forgotten joke. We were happy then, we could be again. When I didn't respond, her approach shifted. I've sent an email to your firm's partners, she said casually, about the inappropriate relationship with your coworker. My blood ran cold. There is no inappropriate relationship. The texts suggest otherwise. Eliza, don't do this. She placed the photo down carefully. I don't want to, but you're not giving me any choice. That evening, I called my attorney, then Naomi. The firm opened an HR investigation that cleared both of us, but the damage lingered. Whispers in hallways, meetings rearranged to keep us separated. "I'm sorry," I told Naomi over coffee near the office. "I never meant to drag you into this." "You didn't, she did." No accusation in her voice, just that same directness I'd come to rely on. "I've requested a transfer to the Denver office. It's a promotion, actually." My heart sank. "When?" 3 weeks. The Riverside project will be finished by then." "Naomi, Don't." She raised a hand. "Not now. Not like this." She was right, of course. Whatever might have developed between us deserved a cleaner beginning than the messy ending I was still navigating. 2 months into the separation, at my attorney's suggestion, I started therapy. Something I'd resisted despite Eliza's profession. Dr. Warner's office became a weekly constant, his methodical questions like architectural probes testing the stability of my thought patterns. "Tell me about your parents' relationship," he suggested during our 3rd session. I described my father's emotional distance, my mother's anxious efforts to please him, how she'd smooth over his moods, anticipate his needs, make excuses for his absences. "And your relationship with your mother?" "Close. She was my champion, still is." "Did you feel you needed to protect her?" The question caught me off guard. "Sometimes, I guess. From disappointment." "And in your adult relationships?" The connection clarified slowly. How I'd learned to anticipate others' needs, to be the stable one, the reasonable one. How I'd been drawn to Eliza's intensity partly because it echoed my father's unpredictability. How I'd ignored red flags because accommodating emotional chaos felt like love. I thought if I was patient enough, understanding enough, she'd feel secure, I admitted in a later session. But it was never about what I did or didn't do. And now? Now I'm learning to distinguish between empathy and enablement. Outside therapy, I reintroduced myself to solitude. I took long bike rides along the river trail. I joined a chess club that met Tuesday evenings. I called my sister more often. I cooked actual meals instead of ordering takeout. Naomi texted occasionally from Denver, professional updates, a question about a mutual colleague, a photo of a building she thought I'd appreciate. I responded with similar restraint, respecting the boundaries we'd established. "Are you dating yet?" David asked 4 months into the separation, during a basketball game at his house. "Not ready." "Because of Naomi?" I considered the question. "Because of me? I need to understand why I accepted so little for so long before I risk doing it again." That night, lying in my quiet apartment, I realized I no longer felt the grinding anxiety that had been my constant companion for months. The divorce would be finalized soon. Eliza had stopped alternating between reconciliation attempts and threats. My work was back on track. For the first time in years, I was living according to my own blueprint rather than navigating someone else's design. The divorce became final on a Tuesday in October, 6 months after I'd moved out. The document arrived by certified mail, 15 pages of legal language that officially dissolved 7 years of marriage. I signed for the package in sweatpants and a faded college t-shirt, thanked the courier, and set the envelope on my kitchen counter while I made coffee. No dramatic feelings swept over me. No crushing regret, no soaring liberation. Just a quiet recognition that one chapter had ended, making space for whatever came next. 3 weeks later, I ran into Eliza at Riverfront Park, the first time I'd seen her since the final mediation session. She was with a man, tall with glasses, his hand resting lightly on her lower back. She saw me before I could change direction. "Michael." She smiled, seeming genuinely pleased. "How are you?" "Good, actually." Surprisingly, I meant it. Work is busy. You look well. Thanks. This is Stephen. She gestured to her companion. Stephen, this is Michael. We exchanged the awkward handshake of men connected through a woman. I'm going to grab us coffees, Stephen said tactfully, moving towards the park cafe. Eliza watched him go with an expression I recognized, the same one she'd once directed at me. He seems nice, I offered. He is. Pediatric psychologist. We met at a conference last month. She tucked her hair behind her ear, a familiar gesture that no longer triggered anything in me. Listen, I wanted to say, I'm sorry for how everything happened, for the threats and the manipulation. The apology surprised me. Thank you. I've been doing some work on myself. She glanced toward the cafe. Stephen encouraged me to make amends where I can. I appreciate that. What about you? Are you seeing anyone? I shook my head. Not currently. What about your colleague, Naomi? She's in Denver now. Eliza nodded, something like understanding crossing her face. You know what's strange? I think I always knew we weren't quite right, even from the beginning, but I was so determined to make it work. I think we both were. Well? She smiled, this time with a hint of sadness. I hope you find what you're looking for. You too, Eliza, I mean that. As I watched her walk away to join Stephen, I realized I genuinely wished her well. The anger had dissipated, leaving only the clarity of lessons learned. That evening, I drafted then deleted 3 different messages to Naomi. Finally, I wrote simply, I'm in Denver next week for the Reynolds project. Coffee if you're free? Her response came an hour later. Thursday, 10 a.m. Courier coffee on 16th. I'll be the one hogging the window seat. I smiled at my phone, a small flutter of anticipation rising. Not expectation, not pressure, just possibility. The following Thursday, Denver greeted me with crisp autumn air and golden sunshine. Courier coffee bustled with morning customers, but I spotted Naomi immediately. True to her word, she'd claimed the prime window seat, sketchbook open before her. Still designing even off the clock? I said by way of greeting. She looked up, that directness I'd missed evident in her gaze. Says the man who carries a tape measure everywhere. I laughed, settling into the chair across from her. Occupational hazard. How are you, Michael? Really? Divorced, finally, officially. She nodded. And how does that feel? Like putting down something heavy I've been carrying too long. I studied her face, noting new freckles from the Colorado sun. How's Denver treating you? Well, I'm leading my own team now. Smaller projects, but full creative control. Conversation flowed easily. Updates on mutual colleagues, her new apartment with a rooftop garden, my recent commission for a watershed visitor center. No mention of what might have been or could be. Just 2 people reconnecting. As we walked afterward, fall leaves crunching underfoot in the park beside her office, I thought about what had first drawn me to Eliza. Her vivacity, her passion, the way she could light up a room. In contrast, what drew me to Naomi was her steadiness, her self-possession, the way she inhabited spaces without needing to transform them. I've missed this, I admitted. Talking with you? She glanced at me, a small smile forming. We're good at conversation. We are. I took a breath. I'd like to see if we're good at other things, too, eventually. But I'm not rushing anything. Good. She stopped walking, facing me directly. Because I'm not interested in being a rebound or a revenge relationship. That's not what this is. What is it, then? I considered the question with the care it deserved. A beginning, a proper one, with 2 people who know themselves well enough to be honest about what they want. And what do you want, Michael? Someone who sees me clearly. Someone who speaks the truth even when it's difficult. Someone who doesn't need me to be perfect to be worthy of love. I met her gaze. But most immediately, I'd like to take you to dinner while I'm in town, if you're interested. Her smile widened. I could be persuaded. Slowly. We resumed walking, not touching, but close enough to feel each other's presence. Did I tell you about the community garden project I'm designing? She asked. Tell me everything, I said, and meant it. As she described raised beds and irrigation systems, I felt something unlock in my chest. Not the desperate longing I'd once mistaken for love, but something quieter and more substantial. The recognition of someone whose presence made me more myself, not less. The pain of the past year had scraped me hollow, but that hollowing had created space for growth. Not the performative relationship I'd maintained for years, but the possibility of genuine connection. With Naomi, yes, but first, and most importantly, with myself. We rounded the corner toward her office building, our pace slowing as if by mutual agreement, neither of us quite ready to end the moment. Dinner at 7? I suggested. I'll send you options. Make it 8, and I'll choose the place. She paused at the entrance. I know what I like, Michael. The simple declaration held no manipulation, no hidden agenda, just the straightforward expression of a woman who understood her own boundaries and desires. I'm counting on it, I said, and stepped back to let her go, secure in the knowledge that whatever grew between us would be built on truth, not expectation. And that made all the difference.